All right, I thought I'd say something about single-celled awareness. Um, just a grab bag of responses. One, I did go into Gary Stickham room and talked from about 12 to 4 a.m. my time. I guess it was like 10 his time. And it was good. It was a very interesting conversation. And we still disagree, on a lot of the things, and, I backed off on some of the language, but I also told him why, he'll still hear those words from me, because my backing off is, I don't know that a plant has an awareness, but then again, strictly speaking, I don't know that any of you do, but it seems sensible looking at the mechanisms involved, my own internal behavior, can film myself on camera, look at myself as to see what I look like, in third person. And I can relate these things such that obviously, other humans are going to have this consciousness, probably, especially if they report that they have it, because it looks like they should. They're made the same way as me. So, I see that for all of life. Now, there's just a lot of weird stuff here. One, I'm accused of anthropomorphizing, which to me it's like, that's such a lame old argument. It's like, here are things which are only human. How dare you be giving them out to the animals? It's like, well, I didn't. You're just weird little creatures that think you were in the center of the solar system, the center of the universe, and your old village was, you called it the world, and you named your people the people. You're real self-centered, you humans. So, that's why you don't want to share aspects of biology with other biological things somehow. Those are for humans, and there's an assumption, and if you ever try to share those, you are making other things like they are humans. I understand the history of this. A lot of the issue is we used to put spirits in everything, a rock, a tree, and stuff, and even though I'm saying, well, there was some sort of personality, there was some sort of intentionality in there. When we were going around taking the spirits out of the river and all of these and realized, oh, this was just our religion, we took them back from the animals too, as if we'd put them in there. And the problem was only that, maybe we had too human of a conception of what their life was like, but that they had a life, that they had a point of view from which they are viewing the world. That we shouldn't have taken from them. Some people are going, well, the consciousness is in the brain. I'm pointing out, where is the consciousness? Well, it's in the brain. Well, where though? We had reason to look for an organ. Here's an organ like an eyeball. It gives us consciousness. It's not like that. We know the consciousness is distributed somehow inside that system. So can it be distributed in a system without neurons? That would be the question. Well, I'll walk you through a few things. Okay, the cells in your body, the single cells, pretty much just like single cells loose in the wild in a lot of respects. They can react to chemicals in their membranes. They can pass chemicals through, some power to keep some out, bring some in. The biggest difference, you could say one of the differences, look how delicate our cells in our body. They don't live outside the body very well. But lots of single-celled creatures have particular requirements for their environment. Salinity has to be something, or our cells are just the really rich cells that have a really good environment for them and need one that good. And of course, the major weird thing about them compared to other cells is just how cooperative they are. Some might even call it altruistic. You have all these single-celled creatures just wanting to eat their own fats and get their own thing going, be selfish little microbes. But instead they are processing, toxins out of fluids that they then share with other microbes around the body. You could call that altruistic, but I wouldn't. But it is highly, highly cooperative. Okay, but now what about neurons? Now the thing about a neuron, cells normally have these chemical interactors with the world, right? So what's the deal with the neuron? How is it any different? Well, some of its chemical receptors have evolved into electrochemical receptors, right? They are adapted to accept electrical impulses from other cells, right? So that's their sense. So what are they sensing when those things go off, right? Like if a light-sensitive cell, be it in an amoeba collecting sunlight with chlorophyll, or an eyeball, with a light-sensitive cell, It's taking in the light and reacting to that. Well, what's it taking in here? It's taking in information generated by another cell that may be reacting to light or any other. It's sensing another cell. If that's a light absorbing cell, then the neuron is actually sensing what a cell in your retina is outputting. It's sensing other senses. At some point, some cell might be collecting actual physical information, but then these neurons, most of the neurons, are sensing what other cells are sensing. Now, can a cell do this without neurons? Well, of course. Those receptors evolved from chemical receptors, and you could have the signal that's coming in electrically just come in with the chemicals. What would the difference be? The difference would be the speed of that system, the frequency, the processing frequency of that system. So it would change what the system could be aware of, for example. Because you can only be aware of something if you have a high enough frequency to capture it, right? If you have a camera and there's a high speed or just anything going on, the camera has to have, a movie camera has to be taking the frames fast enough. They have to be faster than the action, or else you miss the action. Because if it's like picture, then something that happens really quick, you won't see it. So neurons help us have a higher frequency, and we see higher frequency phenomena. But in terms of can there be a cell whose job it is, or an organ, to receive a chemical output by another cell, which is what the neurons do, and somehow what gives the neurons a network where they're capable to express this consciousness. Yeah, that can happen with a cell that has just chemical receptors in it. There's no logical, material, physical reason it couldn't, right? And in fact, we should expect that it will, because our bodies work that way. We communicate to neurons through these impulses, but then they have to, they're next to a gland that releases chemicals. That's how most of your body is still communicating. And if you think of a single-celled creature, if it on the surface of the cell has a membrane that when a sugar comes, it recognizes the sugar and then starts doing something, say to produce enzymes that can digest sugar, that means that something on the surface received that chemical. It received another chemical that something in the nucleus then reacts to, just like a neuron. There has to be something in there that reacts to that signal, or else it wouldn't be a signal. It's a chain reaction. The sugar touches the surface of the cell, and the whole cell starts to react. Other parts of the cell, at least, if not the whole thing, are going to start to react. So something has to be accepting the propagation of that original signal, that signal that came in that there's a sugar here. Now we know it's not the sugar itself, it's that chemical structure then releases a signal that something else can absorb and release. And in the end, things that are responsible for producing, say, getting ready to digest, have to be activated. It has to be through a chain of events, and there has to be cells that without neurons are accepting chemical signals from other cells, very much like neurons do, producing a network. Now, the only way you could say you can't have consciousness is if somehow you could find out that there's a frequency domain, a speed domain at which consciousness is possible. But I think time is very similar. Something that moves very slow has a similar experience over a long period as something that moves very fast has in a short period. There's a scale of time that localizes to yourself. And I see no reason that a biological system, it might be very slow, but the feelings or experiences that it's having could still exist because they exist in us. You say, well, we see it's in our brain. Well, I see that it's beyond our brain. There's a neurological classification of animal, but there's also a broader classification of animal where all the same things are happening. And the differences are the speed at which it's happening. And to me, the speed at which something is happening does not fundamentally change what's going to happen there, just how fast it's going to play out.